All right. How is everybody doing? Leave a comment or something. Let me know you're here. What's going on, everybody? What's going on? Let's go. All right. So we're gonna talk about metaphysics. What can we say about metaphysics? If it's possible to say anything about metaphysics, right? What is metaphysics? Metaphysics and metaphysical principles, they safeguard our ability to talk meaningfully about existence, about identity, about God. They explain what it means for something to be, how things remain the same even though they change, and how our concepts hook into reality. So if these concepts collapse, then logic collapses, language collapses, and truth becomes noise. The first principle of metaphysics ontology is the principle of non-contradiction. No same thing, same respect, both and. It is impossible for the same attribute at once to belong and not belong to the same thing in the same respect. So nothing can both be and not be in the same respect at the same time. Contradictions dissolve meaning. Contradictions collapse. The principle of non-contradiction is the bedrock. If someone says this door is locked and not locked at the same time in the same way, they haven't said anything. They've said something that cannot be in reality. If you permit contradiction, you can prove anything and you can deny anything, because words no longer track what is or what isn't. So the door is locked and not locked at the same time and in the same way is incoherent. This matters because this is a bedrock of rational discourse. Without reality, without the principle of non-contradiction, logic, science, and communication collapse. So again, like I always say, first principles seem to be they seem to be simple and you know, almost tautological, like they're saying the same thing over and over. But first principles get disregarded. For instance, you know, Lawrence Krauss goes to say things like, you know, a universe from nothing. You have to understand, nothing can do no thing. If nothing does something, then that nothing was something, because no thing can do no thing, right? And so we see in Big Bang cosmology that, you know, we have multiple lines of independent lines of evidence that verify the general form of the Big Bang cosmological model. So in short, if the universe is expanding in the forward direction of time, if we reverse the arrow of time, it contracted to an infinitesimally small, infinite curvature of space-time, as Stephen Hawking called it. And from that basic nothingness, right? So if all the matter was in a tiny point and the curvature of space-time was so intense that it was basically nothing, okay, out of nothing came everything. So this idea of a universe out of nothing is a contradiction, okay? There had to be something that created the universe, okay? This something, this agent outside of time, matter, energy, and space, right? If time, matter, energy, and space had a beginning, the cause has to be outside of the beginning. So, you know, if everything outside time, matter, energy, and space, you know, if there was something outside of time, matter, energy, and space, it had to be timeless, you know, matterless, and incredibly powerful to create this change, this effect. This we call God. So we're talking about metaphysics. Hey, chat, let me know what's going on in the chat. All right. So that's the principle of non-contradiction. The principle of identity. A thing is itself. A thing is what it is, and it is not another. So to exist is to be determinate. This thing, not everything. Identity is the first condition for meaning. So without the principle of identity, you can't distinguish one thing from another. You are you and I am I. Truth and falsehood would become impossible, because if you can't can't even keep reference stable if you don't have the principle of identity. And this has a theological edge. Confusing creator and creature collapses the difference between God and man and destroys so many things. Right worship. If God is not God and man is not man, you don't get spirituality. You get idolatry dressed up as insight. So God is God. Creator is creator and creature is creature. So the principle of identity. You know, there's this idea where like New Age spirituality is something like you have to awaken your divine consciousness or something like that, and you're able to, you know, you're going to be able to manifest. And this is absurd. This is a contradiction. You're not a god, you are a human being. You're created in the image of God. You have a rational intellect. You have agency. You have the capacity to choose. But you're not a God. You can't create out of nothing. You're not omniscient. You're not omnipresent. You're not all powerful. And that's that. So the principle of the excluded middle. Things are either true or false. Of any determinate statement, it either is or it isn't. So a definite claim is either true or false. There's no third state for the same claim in the same respect. So the principle of the excluded middle forces claims to cash out in reality instead of floating in maybe as a lifestyle. If I say I have a matchstick in my hand, right? I either do or I don't. It's not a kind of, or it's not maybe one will appear, right? Maybe one will appear if I say I have a matchstick in my hand. This matters most where people try to blur moral and metaphysical lines with euphemisms. If a claim is determinate, you don't get an in-between category to avoid its truth conditions. So I am either sitting down, you know, on this chair, or I'm not. You know, I'm either talking to you right now, broadcasting on the internet, or I'm not. So this prevents endless hedging. It forces claims to be accountable to reality rather than vibes. So the next principle, reality 4, is the principle of intelligibility, of being. Reality is knowable. This might be a little bit controversial. Some people might push back. I'm a realist, so I'm pretty committed to the principle of intelligibility of being, which states basically that reality is knowable. Being, existence, is not nonsense. If something exists, it is in principle understandable. Not necessarily easy, but not meaningless. So this makes truth-seeking possible. So the principle of intelligibility of being is what gives reason a ground to stand on. If reality were fundamentally irrational, then reason, language, measurement, logic, and inference would have no anchor. The fact that we can understand reality as a chain of explanations, causes and effects, identities, stable natures, presupposes reality, the principle of intelligibility of being. Without which, you know, your truth, my truth is just noise. So if reality were fundamentally irrational, reason, language, measurement, and inference, deductions, logic, would have no anchor. So this protects inquiry itself. This protects inquiry. Without reality, principle of intelligibility of being, truth collapses into sounds people make to signal, tribe membership. All right. Reality 5, principle of essence and accident. What it is versus how it is. What a thing is versus how it is. So essence is what a thing is. Accidents are changeable properties, size, color, location, condition. Essence gives identity. Accidents allow variability without identity collapse. So the principle of essence and accident is how you explain real change without destroying identity. There are things about you that can change: weight, hair, age, location, clothing, condition. You remain you. These are accidents. But there are essential properties tied to you that are what you are. If you change your outfit, you did not change your nature. If you modify your appearance, you did not become a different kind of being. If you mutilate your genitals, you're still the gender you were when you were born. This is simple, but modern discourse constantly tries to treat accidents as if they were overwrite essence. And once you do that, identity becomes plastic, language becomes unstable, and moral reasoning becomes impossible because the subject of the claim is never fixed. An apple is still an apple, whether it's green, red, or brown. A person is still the same person with weight gain, hair loss, aging, and illness. Or even if they're, very young. Maybe so young that they're still, a fetus. So this explains change without destroying identity. This also underlies sacramental theology. For instance, the Eucharist essence changes, the accidents remain. All right, the reality of the principle of act and potency. Becoming is real and coherent. Change is real. Becoming is intelligible. It's understandable. So things change because they have potentials, potencies, capacities to become, and can receive actuality, actions, what they are now. This avoids two errors: treating change as an illusion. Change is not an illusion, it's a real thing. But change is not a contradiction. You still have your essence. So the principle of act and potency explains why you can be stable in identity and still be in motion towards goals. You are a being. You are becoming, learning, training, healing, growing, decaying, choosing. None of that violates the principle of non-contradiction or the principle of identity, because potency is not the same as actuality. A student is not already fluent, but becomes fluent. A seed is not already a tree, but becomes one. So you don't have to say change is fake, and you don't have to say change is contradiction. Example, a seed has the potential to become a tree. A student has the potential to become fluent. This is the engine room of metaphysics. It explains motion, growth, learning, and causality without nonsense. So you'll often hear about the ship of I think it's Theseus. So the ship of Theseus, is the thought experiment where a ship gets repaired, plank by plank, to the point where none of the planks are the original planks. And I think in a different thought experiment, they even go as far as rebuilding the ship plank by plank at a separate location. And the question is, which one is the ship of Theseus, right? And so what you have there is you have change and you have potential. So you have the identity of the ship of Theseus. Now if the ship is, you know, doing the thing that ships do, which is, you know, floating on water, carrying people and goods. You know, if you're replacing plank by plank, every plank of the ship, well, the one that's serving the function, you know, is the ship of Theseus. Now, if let's say they're both on water somehow, well, you know, the constituent parts of the ship of Theseus move to another part, right? And that change, that becoming at a different part, that's the ship of Theseus. It was developing same as it was built the first time. And the one that is replacing it, well, that's another ship that's slowly becoming. Now you have two ships that have a unique relationship. All right, so the principle of the whole is greater than the part. Reality.7. Parts make sense inside of the whole. Parts are for wholes. Wholes give meaning to parts. All right, this is very important. The whole gives a meaning to the part, and the part is made for the whole. So parts have meaning in relation to the whole. If there wasn't a whole, there would be no meaning. So contrary to popular belief, you know, when we stare into the void, when we stare at the night sky, we are a part of the whole. This is not a reason to feel things are meaningless. They're actually full of meaning. They're full of meaning. So if you look at it, you know, for instance, the principle of the whole is greater than its part is obvious the moment you stop talking and actually look. A heart is astonishing, right? It does amazing things, but it only makes sense inside a living body doing its work. A gear has a function, but only inside of a machine. Like eyes are beautiful as part of a face, not detached trophies. This principle is constantly violated by reductionism. When someone tries to reduce a natural phenomena or whatever, like a person to just cells or a society to just incentives, the common good to, you know, just money, or the church to just politics. So we have to look at the whole to really understand the picture we're in. If we reduce anything to a part without looking at the whole, that's where meaningless comes from. When you reduce something and you separate it from the whole. All right, say hi in the chat if you're hanging out. Say Jesus Lord. All right, so the principle of reality.8, principle of participation and degrees of being. That's where I got the thumbnail. Created perfections are received. All things participate in being, and God alone is being itself. So created beings do not possess existence or perfections, truth, goodness, beauty, intelligence, life by themselves. They receive it in limited ways. So perfections appear in degrees. That's a lot. It sounds like, you know, word salad. Let's break it down. This is basically saying again, you didn't create yourself. You were created. You can't create something out of nothing. You're dependent on materials. If you were to fashion them together in novel forms, but there's very little you can do by yourself. Like you can, you have some bodily fluids, but they're not going to do a whole lot, unless you join them with in the right context. Well, then you could produce new life. And this is the most, the closest thing to doing something similar to what God can do, which is why it's so strong, this and why it has to be defended so strongly, right? The conception of human life is the closest thing to doing what God can do, that human beings can possibly do, right? So we receive existence. We can't give existence. The little existence that we have, that we can give, we received. So this is the principle of participation. And this is true of everything, of the mineral, of the vegetable, of the animal, of the human. So created beings do not possess existence or perfections, truth, goodness, beauty, life, intelligence by themselves. They receive being in limited ways. So perfections appear in degrees. Reality forms a genuine hierarchy by mode and fullness of participation. The hierarchy terminates in God, who is not a participant, but the fullness of being, pure, unreceived actuality. So the principle of degrees of being is the grammar for gradation without confusion. Minerals exist. Plants live in a vegetative way. Animals live with sensation and movement. Humans live with an intellect and a will. This is a scale of participation. Perfections show up in degrees. And if you're talking theism, you have to understand what is being claimed. God is not one being among others at the top of a list. God is the unreceived fullness of being, God being itself, while everything else has being by participation and reception. So plants participate in life less fully than animals less fully than humans. So a mirror reflects light it does not generate. So we receive existence and have existence. This matters because it explains contingency and gradation. Finite perfections point beyond themselves to the plenitude they imperfectly share. All right, so reality.9, principles of analogy of being. God talk without literalism or silence. So the next three principles are going to alienate some people because we're going to be talking about God more directly, but turns out we can't talk about God directly because we cannot comprehend God. We're too limited to understand God. But we can talk about God in a kind of roundabout way. Kind of like how we do in metaphysics when we say that there has to be an unmoved mover and uncaused cause that set the world in motion, etc. There's things we can know about God. So, that's why we're saying that we can talk about God analogously. We can't talk univocally, which would be like precisely how he is. But we're not talking, we're not equivocating. We're not saying something that's completely wrong. We're saying something that's analogous. It's like two parallel roads, right? God might be a higher road that we can't grasp, but we can run the same direction on this, lower road. So how we speak about God, language about God is analogical. It's not univocal, same sense as creatures. It's not equivocal, totally unrelated, right? The principle of analogy of being is how you avoid two disasters at once. So disaster one is crude literalism, treating God as just another being, basically a bigger creature, right? Which is a caricature. And this is the God that people don't believe in, obviously. And disaster two is total skepticism. You can't say anything about God, right? You can't know God. Like God is kind of like how deists, I guess, think about God. Sorry, I'm sleepy. So when we say God is good, it's not, like a good boy, good dog goodness. It's a good, much greater. It almost seems a different category of good. But it's not an empty claim either. It's analogous. It's parallel, right? Goodness in degrees. It signifies a real perfection in God in a higher mode. And that goodness, that, good boy, the puppy manifests is received by the puppy. He didn't create himself. And so it reflects something about God, principle of like begets like, and sufficient reason, and all these things. And say something in the chat. All right. So again, this prevents crude literalism and sterile skepticism. Analogy holds knowledge and mystery together. So the next principle is the principle of divine simplicity. So God is simple. In God, essence is existence. So the essence of God is existence. He told Moses, I am. I am. That's what he said in the burning bush. So in creatures, their essence and existence differs. What a thing is not that it is. What a thing is what it is. It's not that it is. In God, the essence of God is that he exists. He is. His essence is that he is the foundation and the creator of everything. We all receive existence from God. That's his essence. So he is his own act of being. He willed himself into existence, and he wills the whole of creation. So the principle of divine simplicity is where many people feel the fire hydrant effect, because it's a genuine mystery that you can understand partially without exhausting. So this is what it means to meditate on a mystery. There's things you can know about a mystery, but you can't know everything about a mystery, because then it wouldn't be mysterious, right? So you're not going to exhaust a mystery. You did not give yourself existence, you received it. You can lose it, but Your essence is not identical to your existence. You don't have a hold on your existence. Your existence can be taken from you. But in God, there is no composition like that. God does not have existence like a property. God is existence. He is subsistent being. This is why divine unity, immutability, and infinity are not add-ons. They flow from what God is. So humans have goodness and power. God is goodness and power in his very essence. So this grounds divine unity, immutability, and infinity. God is not assembled from parts or attributes. He is subsistence. He is subsistent being himself. Okay, so the next principle is the principle of received act. So we stopped talking about God a little bit. This is the principle of finiteness of received act. And this is a principle that makes sense very, very easily, right? So reception limits the receiver, not the act. So when a being receives actuality, the being receives it in the capacity that he's able to. Okay? So the principle of finiteness of received act explains why finite beings reflect God imperfectly without implying any defect in God. So a thimble and a barrel both receive water, but not equally. And I guess, we're still talking about God. Not because water changed, but because the receivers differ. Likewise, creatures receive being and perfections according to their mode. This also explains a practical fact of pedagogy. People receive truth according to their capacity, which is why formation takes time and why clarity matters. So a small thimble, a little cup, and a big barrel can receive water, but each according to their capacity. Creatures receive according to their mode. This matters because it explains finite limitations. The limitation is in the creature, not in existence itself. All right, so I guess we finish reality and being. I do not know if we're going to keep going. We got epistemology, but I think I'm falling asleep. So, yeah, I'm going to call it. All right, peace be with you. Peace.